What's going on? Dylan Conrad, Metabolic Mama Secrets. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the top four hormone optimizing workouts. Before I get into that, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Spotify, iTunes, bell button, follow. All helps the algorithm. Helps me help more moms like you. Help me help you. Hashtag. Was that Jerry Maguire? Yeah, it was Jerry Maguire. Anyways, all right, let's get back on track. ADD Dylan. Okay, cool. So the top four hormone optimizing workouts, and I covered one of them obviously on earlier this week, or whatever week you're listening to this on, about strength training and hormone optimization, why it's superior, and this and that. And I want to go a little bit more in detail about hormone optimization. I'm going to give you 3 other workouts too that are going to be in those top 4, and how you actually should be implementing these. So first, if we're looking at hormone optimization and workouts, when you are an overworked mom, which is basically a redundancy, it's the same thing, right? This means high cortisol, right? Which means like because of it's high cortisol from actually it'd be high, low, or high and low cortisol. If you are high cortisol prolonged, right, that just means that like you have chronically elevated levels of cortisol. If you are low cortisol, it's from a result of being super high cortisol, so your body like cannot produce any more cortisol. And if you're high-low, that's basically the worst thing ever, because you're like so tired, and then you're wired but tired at night, so you like cannot sleep. But it's a combination of both, and sometimes that's like through the day you're high, and then at night you're low. Anywho, cortisol basically is something that's natural when you work out. Like, you need to spike cortisol to get a training stimulus. Like, that's just how it happens. That's not a bad thing. The bad thing is when it stays chronically elevated, or it stays elevated for a prolonged period of time. And so how does that happen? We look at 2 things. One is, if you're watching on YouTube, it's probably a lot easier, but if you're listening to this, so we're looking at 2 things. And if you're listening to this, you could picture 2 sides of like a graph, right? And so on one side we have the recoverability, right, which is your body's ability to recover from the workout. And on the other side you have your training, right? And so recoverability, there's not much as an overworked mom that you can change, right? So I mean, optimize what you can. If you can get more sleep, if you can meditate, if you can de-stress, if you can cut stressors out of your life, great, right? But chances are that's not going to move that much, especially if you have like toddlers or newborn. If we're looking on the other side of the spectrum, which is training, right? Trainability. If your trainability is higher, right? You have more training stimulus than you have recovery. Your body will not adapt this training stimulus, right? So you will not build muscle, your metabolism won't be boosted up, you won't get the hormone optimizing effects. And on the contrary, like you will be, if this recovery is outweighing this training, if this recovery is not outweighing this training, that is when we see really high cortisol, dysregulated cortisol, high and low cortisol, which is going to affect every hormone down the stream. I talked about this a little bit earlier in the week, that if you don't have cortisol under control, if you try to address thyroid, progesterone, estrogen, basically any other hormone down the chain, you're not really going to get that under control. It's going to be continually up and down, up and down, up and down, right? So once you get that cortisol under control, and so what is going to add too much of a stimulus to your training is probably doing too much, right? But that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So what you want to think about is exercises that have high volume, so like a high amount of sets and reps, or if you take something like running, if you're doing run 1, 2, 3, if you're running like 4 steps per second times 60, that's 6, 12, 18, 24 times 60. That's a lot of repetitions, right? And that's why running boosts cortisol so much and is not good for your body if you're an overworked mom, right? Of course, like I'm talking to overworked moms here. So if you have running, or if you have CrossFit, or if you have like butchered HIIT, as long as you're recovering more and you're sleeping enough and you're not stressed, like you can recover from these workouts no problem, right? But if you're an overworked mom, we're talking about a whole different situation here, right? Just lifestyle wise. And so high volume, high intensity is the thing that's going to create too much of a training stimulus. And then we're looking at the other side, right? It's going to be too little of a training stimulus, which is like not doing enough, or not doing the right things, or not getting optimal enough stimulus to create that recovery, right? Because we need that recovery to actually adapt, for our bodies to adapt. So high volume, high intensity would be things like running, be things like, hard biking. It would be things like CrossFit, most CrossFit, It would be things like Orange Theory Fitness, which is kind of like a butchered version of high intensity intervals. So basically anything you're pushing really, really hard and you're going for a long period of time. Now, on the other hand, the top 4 best are going to be, and before I get into that, why is a dysregulated hormone? Why is that going to kill your fat loss and just like your overall well-being? Well, obviously, dysregulated hormones make you really more tired. They have a whole stream of effects, like just mentally, just cognitively, like just not a good thing to have, right? But if we're looking at the actual metabolic effect, say the hormone like thyroid, that has a direct correlation with your actual metabolism, right? And so that's what you see when we're talking about thyroid dysfunction and people like gaining a ton of weight or losing a ton of weight. It's because their metabolism shifts based on that, right? And so getting that cortisol and getting the thyroid under control is going to be optimal for helping your fat loss. The other things we're talking about are just like if you have cortisol, they have a thing called cortisol belly because it signals to leptin to store more body fat in your stomach disproportionately. That's why a lot of women like post-pregnancy, like I've never stored body fat in my stomach and like now I have like a beer belly. It's weird, right? And so that's kind of in a nutshell how it does hinder the fat loss from a metabolic standpoint, from a leptin standpoint. The top best exercise is going to be the high intensity, low volume. High intensity, low volume. So things that there's not a ton of reps in, but you're pushing super hard, like RP, rate of perceived exertion, like 7 or more out of 10. Or just low intensity, high volume. So low intensity, high volume would be things like walking, right? There's a lot of steps in there, but it's like really low intensity. It's super easy. Yoga, very low intensity, a lot of movements, a lot of holds, a lot of that stuff, but it's pretty easy. And then on the other side, we're looking at strength training, which is high intensity, low volume, because obviously if it's, there's a saying, a phrase, junk volume, which is basically like the amount of exercises you're doing past like what is creating a stimulus it's just junk. It doesn't matter. For me personally, I like to do, I'm not even gonna get into that because that's a more advanced thing I will eventually cover in terms of like what that workout should look like. But as long as it's not like a million sets and reps and you're taking like an hour and a half in the gym at 45 seconds of rest between each exercise, you're good, right? So you want to keep the volume really low, maybe 3 to 6 exercises total, 3 to 4 sets, the last set taking a failure, going really, really intense, right? Don't take all sets to failure because that'd be too much intensity, okay? And then we're looking at traditional high intensity interval training. So this is basically how it was researched to be done, which is you take anywhere from like a 10 to 30 second sprint all out. That can be on like a bike or outside in the sprint, or it could be a certain exercise that just like is like basically analogous to a sprint, like a slide board mountain climbers, just going all out, all out, all out, and then resting with at least a 2-to-1 work to rest ratio. So if you're doing 30 seconds of mountain climber sprints, it should be a 15-second rest and then alternating back and forth. It shouldn't go lower than 15 seconds rest if you're doing 30 seconds. It should go 30, 30, 30, 45. And so that just becomes inverse. The more rest you do get, the more intensely you are going to be able to push and maintain the entire workout. So that's why I like a lot of rest between the actual sets. Dog crap training, I kind of covered that a little bit, I think last week or the week before, whenever. But the thing is, it's very, very, very high intensity. But the volume is like so low, it's insane. There's like 3 to 5 exercises and you're only really doing one working set. You're only doing like one real hard set and that is it. Like the other sets are like warm up. Very interesting process, but the reason it works so well and the reason it has such a cult following that it does is because it creates such a high training stimulus with such high recovery as well, because it doesn't impair your recovery whatsoever. So those are the top 4 you should be doing, but of course, number 1, when you are deciding which one you should actually choose, whatever is realistic for you and whatever you actually enjoy, that's where you should start. If you do like strength training, you like lifting heavy weights, you do like pushing balls to the walls with HIIT, you like walking, like yoga, like whatever it is, find what you like, find what's realistic for you. And that's obviously going to shift throughout the year and throughout the week. So be flexible. Anyways, hope this helps. Love y'all and enjoy the rest of your day.